I truly experienced a whole, first half of my life not sleeping well, not prioritizing it, and thinking, kind of like that goldfish analogy, like the goldfish doesn't know that it's in the dirty water or whatever. Like, I just didn't know that a life where you wake up in the morning and you feel well, you feel rejuvenated, you're not dragging, headachy, feeling almost borderline hungover. I literally used to think that was how life just was. And so after going through this period of insomnia, transform my life, I was, put on sleeping pills and all kinds of things. And I thought that this was like the only path at that point. I thought that that was just what was going to be available to me in my future. Turned out I was very wrong. And I really am committed to sharing what I believe in our modern society has become a skill set, which is sleeps and sleeping well.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a great analogy. The fish and the fishbowl would not
Yeah.
notice the water. We don't notice the air around us. It's easy to look back and say, like, okay, these are the things I was goofing up, and these are the things that I'm doing so much better with sleep now. But again, at the time, what were some of the things that you could have addressed earlier on? And how did that become an interest of yours to start to address?
So good. Well, one, simply the way I was relating to this area of life was one of a lot of labels and narratives. So for that became self-fulfilling prophecies, if you will. So I would say things like, I'm a short sleeper, I'm a night owl, it's in my genes, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Mind over matter. If you don't get a good night's sleep, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Come on, don't be weak-minded, hustle, whatever, all these sort of things. And I was relating to this area like it was just sort of a fixed reality. And I see this a lot for people where they come our way and they're like, well, I've always been a bad sleeper. And, my father never slept well, or this, that, and the other, whatever. And while we might have particular set of results at this point, what I think is truly available to us, because our society is one where we have become so divorced from some of the fundamental, often free or low cost things that can support totally transforming our sleep, that are often environmental or behavioral in nature, that when we start implementing these things again, we can actually, or maybe not even again, maybe for the first time, a lot of the things that we are likely discussing today, many people just have never really done. And I had certainly never really done those things. So what life looked like for me before was one of a serial entrepreneur in Manhattan, burning the candle at both ends, had no clue when sunrise, sunset, just had it that, oh, as human beings, we've surpass the need, this like, lowly need to be connected to these rhythms of nature, living in the city that never sleeps, could create our own self-created rhythms of nature. And I would just be justified and righteous and say, well, what's the big deal? Just sleep in. I make my own hours, not a problem. And having no clue what that was doing to my biology, my psychology, and more. So to begin, I think it was that kind of maladaptive psychology and relationship to my sleep, and thinking that I'm just kind of at the effect of versus in the driver's seat of my sleep results. And then once I started, when I went to the doctors, leaving with sleeping pills. And just so any listener is clear, if you are dealing with something with your sleep, the first line treatment is not supposed to be giving you sleeping pills right now. It is actually supposed to be cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. And that's also not the only thing that's available. I'm not to belittle that, because it does have great efficacy and lots of research behind it. But they're even beyond just like, do you have a sleep disorder? Are you practicing CBTI? That's often some of the two key things that you'll be met with if you're kind of lucky enough to meet with a sleep physician or sleep specialist. Those two things are a lot of what is kind of addressed or given as key tools. And those, for many people, can do a great job. But what I think is available and what's missing is this whole world of optimization, not just sleeping just for, kind of getting by, but optimizing our sleep, really looking at this like a vital sign, and starting to go in more deeply and start to live in a way that's pretty foreign to a lot of us today.
Yeah, very well explained. You mentioned the medications. Did you get any of the good stuff? Do you have any good like ambient stories for us?
Oh gosh, yes, I do. So when so this was all while traveling overseas. And so I grew up poor. I didn't travel a lot or any of these things. So when suddenly started traveling, jet lag was like a whole new world to me on top of my wildly maladaptive sleep issues and mounting stress. My business and just all kinds of things were just not working. And so when putting all that together was kind of this perfect storm. So when I did go to the doctors, I went to this like little like it's this little clinic in Croatia of all places. And, the ceiling is kind of coming down, nothing against whatever. But, what I was given was actually pretty old school. The first thing I was given was Valium, which I don't know, is this
Nice.
1960? But so I was given Valium the first go, and that's in kind of the benzodiazepine grouping. Then later I was given different things in different places in Budapest, a mix of Xanax, thanks, and then moved into Ambien for, I guess, both for fun. And then the Ambien kind of shifted over in Italy. They were like kind of shifting over fully to Ambien. You know, and did any of these do the trick? Absolutely not. Now, granted, I don't want to get out of the scope or bounds of certainly medications have a time and place, but we are clear that benzos and Z drugs are really the what is expected or how they are laid out is to be used for short-term use, not long-term use for our sleep. And unfortunately, there was really no game plan with how I was handed out these, and that's what we see a lot for people. I have people come my way that have been on benzos or Z drugs for decades, and it becomes a real concern, a real struggle to get off of these mindfully, and then to find people that are kind of benzo literate, if you will, and know how to approach the withdrawal process of this and tapering. And I mean, that's a whole other conversation for sure.
Wow. Wow. Well, at least you didn't like wake up in a prison cell. You hear stories like that all the time, or like wicked
Oh,
DUI stories, and like the best ambient stories. They're scary. They really are. I shouldn't laugh about it because they are scary, but like it's good that you got past some of that stuff because you can really get yourself bound up in a knot by those prescriptions. I've heard very little good stories about that. And when we're talking about
totally.
sleep, there are so many different things that we could do to optimize our sleep,
Yeah.
regardless of whether you think you're a good sleeper now or you're a terrible sleeper or you're on medications. There's a path and we can maybe get you out of that, hopefully get you out of that by just fixing a lot of the things around sleep. And one of the biggest things that we mentioned in the introduction is chronobiology. I think this
Mm,
is so important to touch on. I know this is an area of passion of yours.
yeah.
Tell us what is chronobiology and why it's important to think about our 24-hour clock when it comes to sleep.
Yes, so important. So chrono, chrono meaning time, biology, our physiology, our biology, and so how time affects our biology. And chrono can apply to many things. So we might look at things like chronopharmacology, so the timing of our drugs or some common drugs, even things like caffeine, alcohol, THC, supplements, prescriptions, etc., that might be impacting our sleep results. So the timing and dosing of those. There's chrononutrition, so the timing of our foods and the types of foods and how there might be a more optimal time and a suboptimal time. And then we can look at if we're taking chrono to this next step. When we talk about chronobiology as a whole, that's really the umbrella that we're approaching things from at Sleep as a Skill. Because underneath that, what we're doing is something known as circadian rhythm entrainment, fancy set of words to really just simply say we're trying to almost go back in our modern society, kind of a hybrid of how we used to live when we were outside in nature. Because the truth is, when we were outside in nature, a lot of this did get handled. That's why I always say that sleep is a skill in our modern society, because our modern society is really what is starting to take us off course. We know in this great book that just recently came out, Mapping the Darkness, very cool title, about kind of looking at the history of sleep as a research area. One of the things that they know is that sleep was really not studied in any meaningful way until around the Industrial Revolution, with one of the features being the rise of cheap and plentiful electric lights at night. And in alignment with that, we started to see insomnia rates rising. And so those lights, that combined with what I'm calling the indoor issue, the fact that now we've all gone indoors, and what this is doing to our biology, not just like, oh yeah, we're inside a little too much. No, out of 2001, the EPA did a study. They found that at least the average American was spending about 93% of their time indoors, broken down to in buildings and in automobiles, both of which obstruct these rhythms of nature and the signaling mechanisms. And so that was in 2001, before a pandemic, before smartphones, laptops, work from home revolution. Yeah, all the things, right? So it's likely a whole other, it's probably like what, if we were betting people, probably high 90s, if you will. So either way you cut it, we're spending an inordinate amount of time indoors, and this is not how we're designed. Our biology has not caught up to this. This is another reason why another area of possible, things to get into if people are in the entrepreneurial space, building biology and the importance and emerging prevalence of this, of really taking the time to design. If we're spending so much stinking time in these spaces, it would behoove us to make sure that as much as possible, they're serving our biology. So taking it back to this conversation of chronobiology and sleep, well, at its core, we're really trying to start with the most powerful time giver to our circadian rhythm, which is light dark. We know that clearly, lots of research to support that it is the most powerful Zeitgeber time giver. So with that, the most basic way to say it is that we're looking to get brighter days and darker nights. However, the practical application of that does actually take some kind of planning and setting yourself up to actually fulfill on that.